Do you see technology in the church as a necessary evil? Today, we're talking about using that power for good on the Church Revitalization podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization podcast. My name is Scott Ball, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host AJ Matthew. AJ, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining me on this bit of technology that we're using to record this podcast.
Oh, how ironic, isn't it, that we use technology to talk about technology?
Yes, indeed. I do think that because of the pandemic, I think virtually every church, maybe not every church, but virtually every church at this point has embraced the necessity of technology. It's not going away. The internet's not a fad. It's going to be with us for forever. Churches are understanding this, and yet there's a bit of a distance, I think, a lot of churches feel with technology. They think that anytime we're going to be using the internet for something, that it's maybe creating a chasm relationally between us and people. Yeah. And that doesn't need to be the case.
No, at least it doesn't need to be as bad as it is right now. And and that's what we're going to get into today, is kind of some tips on bridging that gap a little bit better. And, even moving from digital to IRL in real life. And I like how I threw that in there. And,
are you Gen Z, AJ?
No, but I got a couple in my house. The goal is still, relationships. So, that's what we're talking about today. How can we use technology to continue to build relationships and foster relationships, and not just use it because we're kind of told we have to, or the world has forced us into it, and like, whatever, we're just going to dip our toe. But I think, if we use it properly, we can build relationships. And as we get into this, I think we're going to have some good examples of how that's worked for us at the Malphurs Group, how it's worked for churches that we work with.
Yeah, absolutely. The problem, the premise here is that the problem is not that we use technology. The problem is that we use technology poorly very often in church. And so we want to encourage you and show you some ways that you can use technology to actually become more relational as a church. It's not a barrier to relationship. It's actually a tool to help facilitate relationships. And we've got 6 things that we're going to talk about today. So let's dive straight in.
Yeah, get the most out of your church management software. So maybe that was already a kicking and screaming scenario for you. Like somebody said, we need a computer database so that we know who goes to church here. But it probably has features that you're not utilizing right now. And it's a great tool, depending on what modules you might have or what software you're using. It probably has some areas in there that you could utilize to a greater extent to manage even who's showing up, who's engaged in like community building activities and ministries at your church, like small groups or Sunday school classes, and who's volunteering. So these are a couple of key areas that you could maybe utilize to a greater extent the software that you already have.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for churches that we work with to have a person, like one person at the church who actually understands how the church management software works, whether you're using Planning Center or Church Community Builder or any of the others. Very often 1 or 2 people know how the software works and everybody else is in the dark. And that's not really good. So it'd be great if you could get your leaders trained up on how to use the software so that you can use it to do what you're talking about, AJ. Know who's actually here, who's engaged. If you were able to track those things well, then you're able to follow up with and connect with people who are not as engaged, or maybe who fell off the face of the earth during the pandemic, and you want to know, are they still okay? So this technology can actually help to prompt you relationally. Whereas in the past, without these tools, you would have to, in fact, I remember these days, we had a in my early on days, AJ, in ministry, we had a database, but it was really just that. It was like a database. It was just a list of names. There wasn't, we really weren't using it for tracking or anything like that. It didn't have that capability. And what we did, and I worked at a church of a couple thousand people, AJ, and we just printed off, pages of reports of people's names, and we split them all up. And then we would just go line by line with a highlighter and highlight anybody first that we knew was still at the church and we had seen. We were just trying to remember, like, has anybody seen this person? And then anybody that hadn't been highlighted, we would just kind of divvied up. And we're like, give them a phone call, see if they're still alive or out there. That's not great. You can use technology to do a better job of keeping in touch and knowing who's engaged so that you can reach out to the people that are not engaged.
Yeah. Yeah. So check out what software you're using and see what maybe other modules are available. Maybe for, moderate increase in cost, you could really add some flexibility to how you deal with things and how you manage having people engage at your church. It's a big deal. Could be a game changer for you.
Yeah, a small plug. I mean, I don't want to. We don't get any money from it, but if you're using the groups module, for example, on Planning Center, group leaders can take attendance on their phones, so you can not just have a head count of how many people are in groups, but which people specifically are engaged in a group and how often. Like, all of that is really good information, AJ. And it's easier than ever to use tools to help you track that kind of thing. And the tools facilitate better relationship. That's the main point behind this whole podcast episode today is, by doing using these tools, you actually get good information, and that good information can lead to better relationship.
That's right. The point is not to have information. The point is to use information to help grow relationships.
Yeah.
All right. Our second point is maybe consider putting some chat software on your website. So you might right now in the upper right-hand corner have a contact us button, and that's fine. But more websites now have this instant communication feature because that's what we're used to, right? Out in the culture, we can almost talk to anybody and ask any question immediately. And so people become used to that. And why not use that in the church? So you go to websites all the time, and in that lower right-hand corner, you see, how can I help you? Or chat with us now. And those are actually really cool. And they're pretty easy to manage. And that could pop up on an app on your phone, or somebody that's in the office that just has a website chat window open. And it just provides something. If somebody had a quick question, they may just otherwise not ask it. But if there is a way to ask it, very simply and quickly, then in the snap of a finger, you might have a relationship with somebody beginning to blossom. So we use that at malfersgroup.com. And it really has it. I mean, I don't know if it rises to game changer for us, but it's kind of flirting with game changer. We've had a lot of conversations and initiated a lot of relationships that turned into long-term relationships from that little piece of technology. So yeah, I think it's a great idea on a church website, Scott.
Totally. I mean, even from, it may even be your church regular attenders who use it. Hey, when's that student ministry pool party? Where is that at? I can't find it on the website. Can you shoot me that information? Or, obviously the real heart would be to connect with someone who's new. If someone's got a question about, where are you located exactly? Or, how should I dress or whatever, they may have a question. The ability to ask that question and get a response is good. And that's, don't make it complicated. If you start looking into the chat software, you're going to see that you can set up bots that answer common questions and all that. Don't worry about all that. Just put the software on there and have a real person, and you can get it set up so that you have on and off times, so that if you're away, they'll get an automatic message that says, hey, someone will reply back to you, tomorrow or something if they were to message you at night. But it is such a great tool. I would put it in the category of game changer, AJ.
Yeah.
Like I really,
Okay.
there's not another tool available. Even email really isn't, it's not instant like that. The fact that someone can instantly reach out to us with a question. I love that. I love that we have that ability. And if we didn't have that on our website, I think we would be losing something. So
we would have fewer contacts, no doubt about it.
Yeah, for sure. And we want to hear from you, listener.
That's right.
So
go ahead, go to malfersgroup.com right now and click
chat it up with us.
Chat. All right.
They'll all go to you, AJ.
Our next one is use volunteer scheduling software to communicate with your team. So this is going back to kind of point one. This might be a module that would need to be added to your church management software. Or maybe you just have a separate standalone system for communicating with volunteer teams, but you can use these things for more than just basic scheduling. And I think that's an additional really good way of continuing or deepening a relationship. Because Scott, I think you said this yesterday when we were talking about this topic. Good communication is a relationship builder. I mean, communicating effectively and timely with people, and also, having a two-way conversation is better than just one-way throwing information at people. So I think we can utilize our volunteer scheduling software to a greater degree to foster relationships. And, look, how key are those relationships already? The people that have signed up to volunteer for something, or regular servers in your church, these are relationships that we should be deepening. So this is a great add-on.
Yeah. Clear and consistent communication is more important than personalized or personal communication that I have to remember to do. Here's what I mean by that. If I can use a piece of software that's going to quickly, efficiently, and timely remind people when they are scheduled to serve, or that they can reply to it and on their own kind of block off their dates and that sort of thing, so that I have a better user experience, for lack of a better term, as a volunteer. I much prefer that to AJ personally reaching out to me and going, hey, can I get your schedule? Hey, what do you think about volunteering on such and such date? Okay, well, let me check with so-and-so and I'll get back to you. Like, that to me is annoying and drawn out. And you might go, well, that's so much more personal though. In that context, I don't care about that. What I care about is quick, easy, efficient. Just give me the information. And so it actually builds a better relationship to have a tool that can work faster and smarter than you in this arena. I know that's counterintuitive, maybe, AJ, but that clear and consistent and that timely is more valuable than, hey, how do you feel about serving on such and such date? And because guess what? You're going to forget when I said I'm going to be out of town. And then you're going to put me on a schedule, and then I'm going to be mad about it. The computer program will never forget when I said I'm going to be out of town, right? And so it facilitates a better relationship with your volunteers if you're using some of these tools.
Don't personally waste my time. Do something quickly and easily. This is kind of the technology equivalent of the meeting that people come out of and go, that could have been an email.
Right.
So
yeah. We've all been there, right? We've all been like, is there some way for us to just offload this aspect of our relationship? I like hanging out with you, but I don't like having this conversation.
All right.
Okay, let's move on.
Maybe that turned harsh, but sometimes you have to.
It's true.
Yeah. All right. Our next one, number 4, is using a texting service to initiate guest follow-up. And a lot of people have started doing this now because of COVID last year. They did switch to these kinds of things whenever they were online. But even, here in person, churches that utilize these for guest follow-up and giving, using these text technology pieces. I don't think I've ever come across a church nor seen any statistics in which the numbers went down. The engagement levels go up. So if you're not doing this, this is one of those things that, eventually getting the big screen in your sanctuary with the lyrics. You just need to do this. Because it does increase the number of guests that will engage with you. Because again, almost like the chat thing on the website, it's easy. They've got everything they need in their hand. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Aren't we wanting to initiate communication and start building a relationship with somebody that we don't yet know? So break down the barriers, make it easy for them.
Totally. I would contend that automating automating a text message that goes out is more personal than the secretary, just customizing the first name in an email that comes out from the church but they do it on Tuesday, or the form letter that the pastor sends in the mail. Sure, maybe he signs it himself, but he's not sitting down necessarily and writing some personal letter. So we have it in our brain that somehow those things are better forms of communication than a automated text message, but they're not anymore personal in actuality. And again, I would contend that it's more timely and prompt. And so initiating, the key word here is initiating guest follow-up. So you would, the first text message is automated. Hey, AJ, thanks for attending Hope Church. We'd love to see you again. If you have questions, let us know. And then if AJ writes back and says, yeah, what do I need to do to get involved? And then a human being should reply to that text message, not a computer. A real life human being can reply to that. But I hate to put it this way, AJ, but it is a bit of a numbers game. And the more conversations that you initiate with a guest, the more guests you're going to build a relationship with. And these texting services are really good at being the first step in a conversation with a new person. So we love text in church. There are others like Pastor's Line. There are other services out there, but this can actually help to facilitate an initial relationship with someone who's new much faster than an email or a letter or a postcard.
And
not that you have to stop doing those other things, by the way, but this is a good first point of connection.
Isn't the entire mission and growth aspect of the worldwide Church of Jesus Christ a numbers game? I mean, wouldn't you say if we can just share the gospel with enough people, a certain percentage of them are going to, want to, seek a relationship with Jesus?
I believe Jesus had a parable about this, did he not? Parable of the sower.
So why wouldn't we go, you know what? If we can just reach out to enough people, a certain percentage of them are going to take that step back towards us. And that could be the beginning of a beautiful relationship. So
absolutely.
All right.
Number five,
use social media to be sociable. It has a word in the title, and it's really lost everything about social, hasn't it, Scott? I don't know what it is. It's a flaming mess, but you can use it for your advantage.
Vitriol, anger.
Yeah. But
the memes aren't bad.
It is still possible to use social media in a way that is just engaging with people in a good way.
I should say the memes aren't all bad. Some of the memes are bad.
There's a lot of funny stuff on the internet, I have to say.
Yeah, there is.
But you have to weed through a lot of garbage. But
totally true.
Yeah.
So use social media to be sociable. I think Molly, who does some work for us, in addition to the work she does with Church Marketing University, one of the things that she's always trying to coach us up on, AJ, is, and we could be better. If we're being honest, if we're just full confession on this podcast, I think you and I could do this better. But, like do a Facebook or Instagram story that doesn't have to be produced. Like it doesn't have to be us filming this way, just on our phones, and more casual. And people engage with that better because it feels like real life, because it is real life. We're not trying to stage anything, So I think we could take this advice ourselves too and use social media to be more sociable, but we don't, churches and us don't just need to use social media to post announcements or content, but actually try to engage conversation. And this would be one that I'd point the finger back at us, AJ, a little bit, don't you think?
Everybody needs a Molly in their life. And so you probably have somebody at your church that is cringing at what you post or the lack of what you post. And that would be a great volunteer engagement position for somebody to say, you know what, I could probably make us seem a little bit better on the internet.
Right. Molly makes us better on the internet, for sure.
Yeah. So, maybe seek that person out, because that could really be helpful.
Yeah. So just use social media to be sociable. It's not just about constant posting. Hey, children's ministry needs more volunteers. Actually try to engage people. And that would be good. This
is not a case in which it's a numbers game. Like, if we just post enough, somebody might engage with something. There's a lot of diminishing returns in social posting. Get somebody that understands it better than me and Scott, and and take their advice,
for sure.
But so the point here, hey, use social media to be sociable. Use it as a way to try to engage people, to build a relationship. And segue to our last point, know when to pivot from online to in person. Scott just kind of teased this back on the texting thing. Whenever it's time for the bot to hang up and an actual human to go, hey, George, let me answer that question for you directly. My name is Billy Bob, or
Billy Bob and George. Those were the names. Those were the stock names you came up with. What is that? Holy smokes, man!
I got to apologize. I'm old.
Not Gen Z, that's for sure.
But know when to pivot from the online thing to in person. And Scott, how can we do that? How can we we've got our technology in place now. We got a couple of these automation things, but we actually want to be able to meet somebody and have a real conversation.
I was just thinking, as you were talking about this, I was thinking about one church I'm working with in particular. They have a 4-week like new member class that they do, and but the first 2 weeks of it you can do online. You can do it kind of on demand on your own, and the second 2 weeks of it, though, you have to do in person, which I kind of like that model. But there's some attrition, like people who take the first 2 weeks but not the second 2 weeks. They do the online part, but they don't do the in-person part. So I'm working with them to try and figure out. It's actually, we're going to spend a whole year working on trying to bridge this gap a little bit and get people to complete the 4 weeks. But creating opportunities like that, things that can start online and then move in person, and you kind of move them along. One of the things, AJ, that we do, that we use, a tool that's helped us, is Calendly, not a sponsor, but again, using technology to move to a more personal relationship. This is sort of the back to volunteer scheduling, although this is meeting scheduling software. One of the most frustrating interactions you'll ever have in ministry or in life in general is, when can we meet? And trying to coordinate calendars and all that's very difficult. I love that for us, we use a piece of software that shows exactly when we're available, and people can just pick a time that works for them, and then we get to have a conversation, relationship. Probably no piece of technology, AJ, has facilitated more relationships for us than that one. That's
totally true. That definitely goes into AJ's game changer category.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be back in the day, you'd have a bunch of email exchanges. No, I'm not available then. No, I'm not that.
Yeah.
You should use some. If you're a pastor, I know you're busy and you've got days that you've got to block off your schedule so that you can write sermons or whatever. But if you want to meet with more people, do some leadership development work, or meet with people who are new, have a calendar software like Calendly. It's free, I believe, initially at least. And send that link out and go, I would love to meet your family. Here's my calendar. When can I meet with you? Pick a time. So again, you can use technology to then build a personal relationship. On that same note, AJ, actually, a good way to maybe segue the end of this thing. We were joking before we hit record that the number of people that I end up working with who listen to this podcast, and this is a piece of technology that we're using to hopefully build a relationship with you. It's not a sales tool. We're not using it to try to make sense, but we're using it's a relational tool. We're using it to we want to build a relationship with you and your church. And so it's actually kind of funny to get to meet churches that we work with who listen to the podcast before they work with us.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'm glad that my relationship with those churches didn't start and end with the podcast, right? I'm glad that I get to meet them and be with them and have this incarnational relationship with them. And so anyways, all that to say, use these tools to create more relationships. And I would say for us, at least at the Malfers Group, and it can be true for your church, without technology, it would be much more difficult for us to build relationships.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So you can go on over to malforsgroup.com/111 and read today's show notes. And also over there, you can subscribe to the podcast. You can also check out the video on YouTube of today's episode, which will also include down there in the description below some discussion questions for your team. So you can watch this together and say, how could we better use social media and technology to our advantage to build real relationships in real life? Thanks for being with us. We're thankful for you, and we'll be back with you again next week.